So we're opening this recording. Okay, I did say in the email that there will be a recording of this, so hopefully everyone is comfortable with that. And we're going to ask everyone to turn off their video and their microphone, so if that's okay with everyone. And there will be a chance, as I said in the chat box, for everyone to ask their questions at the end. So there will be an interactive part, definitely. Okay, so India. Okay, so we've got Argentina. Yeah. Okay, India, Canada, and the US. I know that. Yeah. Okay, so
wow,
coming in. Okay, so we've got a very global, very international crowd here tonight, which is great.
yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully everybody's staying at home, right? Working from home now.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yes.
We've got Ukraine here, Italy.
Ukraine, Italy. That's
Anna
wonderful.
Hallis, welcome. Hello, hello.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay,
hi, everyone.
Yeah, this is really nice. Okay. I've got Germany also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, one new message. Czech Republic. Okay, Martina.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, really good. Yeah. I think we should kind of start now.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. And then people join in. Carolyn from Washington. Wonderful. Okay. So let's get this rolling.
All right.
Okay, let's do it. Okay.
Let's do it.
All
okay.
Right.
We're going to go ahead and officially start. Welcome everybody to our webinar. We are so excited to have you all here today for this very special talk. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment and say this talk is hosted by the International Language Coaching Association. We are a professional association that has come together to develop and support language professionals in the practice of language coaching, as well as to centralize and unite individual and organizational practitioners of language coaching. You can find out more about us on our website, www.internationallanguagecoaching.com. We have membership opportunities with many tools and templates and resources to help you along with language coaching. We also provide training courses that we will be running in May of this year at a kind of foundational level language coaching and a level 2 for that. And we are very, very excited to have Andre Hedlund with us tonight, who is one of our founding members for the International Language Coaching Association, which we call ILCA. Andre is of the edcrocks.com fame. He has a very active website blog. He is a teacher trainer, an advocate for education and neuroscience and psychology, the crossword of those things in education. He's also a consultant for National Geographic Learning, and he is going to take over now and go ahead and start this webinar off.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Carrie. And Gabriela, thank you very much for being here. It's such a pleasure, especially because I'm going to talk about one of my passions, you know, something I've been studying for quite a while now, particularly last year in the UK as a master's student at the University of Bristol. So let's get started. And it's, again, an honor to be here. And I want to mention that I'm fully supporting the initiative that you have started with the International Language Coaching Association. And I think everybody should know more about this initiative and just check the website, look for professional development opportunities, because that's what we can do nowadays, isn't it? We have to follow what's going on, and we have to stay home, so it's your opportunity. The topic that I'm going to discuss today is neuroscience and psychology applied to education. And it's actually something that goes a little deeper. And it's part of this umbrella term that has been used in a couple of contexts now, called mind-brain education, the science of MBE. And I'm going to refer to this book quite a lot. So if you want to, I can actually send the link for you to buy on Amazon, or maybe look for some of the writings of Tracy Tokuhama Espinosa. But this is a wonderful guide for teachers, educators around the world, because it's basically how to apply the science in the classroom and have better results, more effective learning results, okay? So if you want to follow me on social media, there you have all the information that you need. So as they mentioned, I have EDC Rocks. I also do a couple of lives on Instagram. So just look for EDC Rocks on Instagram. You can also send me an email if you want something more specific, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. The problem is I have a lot of demands right now, so it might take a while. So let's start with this quote. I'll give you 30 seconds to read this. So I'd love if you could use your chat box and just say if you agree or not with this, or partially agree, or just mention, what do you think? Agree, agree, yep. I think a lot of people partially agree, okay, good. Totally agree, yes. Well, I don't know the context, your educational background, your context in the country, but I know that here in Brazil, we're basically training kids to pass the entry exams so that they can go to college. That's what we're doing in most of our educational system. And that means that they have to memorize a lot of facts about everything, including, for example, the digestive system of a worm. And if they're not going to go into biology or entomology or anything like that, what is the point, right? I mean, of course, there is some usefulness to knowing how digestive systems work, but I feel like most educational systems around the world, they are focusing on the wrong things, right? And I want to ask you, do you know who said this? Anybody knows who said this? If you do, please use your chat box. I think nobody knows, right? Well, to be fair, neither do I. This is unknown. I don't know if I picked this up, you know, in a conversation with my friends or at a pub, or I saw it somewhere on Facebook, or I don't know who said that. I'm pretty sure nobody knows, but it makes a lot of sense, right? Maybe a bored teacher, exhausted teacher said that. And then that brings us to Tracy Tokuhama Espinosa and her work. She says that all teachers should embrace medicine's first rule, which is do no harm. And if you think about it, and I want you to think a couple of seconds, and I want you to use your chat box again, are we doing harm if we don't if we don't really know how the brain works and how learning should occur and how learning should you know, be more effective? So do you think we're doing some kind of harm to our kids? Think about, you know, think on the individual level as a teacher teaching. If I don't know how the brain works or how people learn best, are we somehow doing harm? And then you can think on the institutional level or the policy level. If the countries, the governments, they don't know how learning occurs because, you know, they're not looking into the sciences of learning, are they doing harm? Are they setting up educational systems that are bound to fail? So let me take a look at what you said here. We're limiting them for sure. Yes, we need to understand how the equipment works. Yeah, exactly. Harm is strong, but we could do much better. Exactly. I love all the answers. Yeah, we could talk about this for hours, probably. I'm not sure harm is the best word, but I understand what Tracy means here. And I think we are doing some harm. I think we are probably preventing or stopping our kids, our learners, from achieving their potential because we're insisting on using outdated stuff that hasn't been, you know, we haven't actually found the evidence to keep doing that, basically. And that means that we are making our students learn less or less effectively, right? And then Tracy Tokuhama is amazing because she is one of the founders of the science at Harvard. And it's a very interesting joint effort that puts together 3 different areas of knowledge. And I think that every teacher should know a little bit more about this joint effort, because, you know, if you just know a little bit about one area, then maybe you don't know what, you know, the other sciences are actually doing and what kind of experiments they have conducted and the results, and then maybe you're not really well informed. So what are those areas? The first one is the one that we use. I mean, it's the area that studies the mind, right? And which area is that? Which area of knowledge or science studies the mind? Anybody? A quiz for you. So you can use your chat box again. Which area studies the mind? Psychology, yes, psychology, well done. So that's psychology. And then we have the area that studies the B, the brain. So which one is that? Neurology, neuroscience, yes, yeah. So that's neuroscience. And then we have the one that studies education, particularly how to teach, or, you know, it focuses on strategies or techniques or classroom practices. So it's methodology, didactic, yes, pedagogy, yes, exactly. So it's actually pedagogy, okay? So just look at this. It's amazing, right? This is exactly what every teacher, every educator needs to be sure that they're doing the best to make their students learn more effectively. And then this is the original diagram, the original image figure that she put together. And I really like to show this original figure from her early books, because I think it shows you something very important. Psychology is not more important than neuroscience, and neuroscience is not more important than education. They're actually on the same level. If you look at the image, you know, neuroscience is not higher or lower. That means that if I know a little bit about psychology, but I don't know a little bit about neuroscience and education, I'm not completely fully informed. But also, if I have very bold claims based solely on neuroscience, and I say this works because neuroscience has conducted a bunch of studies and the results are, I'm also not well informed, because neuroscience happens in the lab. We have to put kids, or, you know, the subjects in fMRI machines, for example, to see what's going on inside their brains. And that's not really what happens in the classroom, right? So we also have to match the findings of neuroscience. We have to somehow look at them and look at what psychology is telling us, and also look at pedagogical practice. Otherwise, we run the risk of saying very stupid things, you know, and doing very stupid things, or doing things that are not very effective, okay? All right, anyway, so let's talk about the principles. Well, this is actually the summarized version of the principles, because there are many principles. I suppose she has more than 20, I think 21 principles in this book, and this book is actually not even the newest version. She's working on another one. This one is from 2014, so it's 6 years old, but 21 MBE principles. But I'm actually gonna use the condensed version that she published in a paper, so it's only 6, to make it easier for you to memorize, and hopefully for you to start applying today after this webinar. I mean, you're not gonna be in the classroom with your kids, with your students. Well, I'm not sure if you're teaching kids or adults, but you can definitely apply the same principles when you are teaching online. So let's work, okay? So what do you have to do? You will look at the 6 principles, and you have to memorize them and use the callers to help you. And don't tell your peers. Well, this is something that I normally do when we are all together. So we don't have to do the don't tell your peers part, because I want to ask you something after I show you all the 6 principles. that is related to the colors, okay? So you can just pay attention to the principles and colors. And of course, there's a game to get you engaged. So a couple of words, 2 words to be exact, and I'm gonna use my spotlight here. 2 words are actually scrambled. I scrambled the letters. So I want you to tell me what the words are, okay? So human, are as unique as. Come on, everyone. Human. Okay, brains and faces, brains and faces. Exactly, well done. So human brains are as unique as faces. What does that tell us, right? That means that we need to work with differentiation, for example, that we have to work with personalization, that individual experiences are very unique as well, because we have different brains. And not, well, the brains are pretty much the same if you think about, you know, the kind of raw material that they're made of. But the thing is, the connections, the experiences, and even genetic factors, they're gonna weigh in, or they're gonna be influencing what we do as humans, how we behave, and even the capacity that we have when it comes to learning, right? Now let's go to 2. Again, there are 2 words there. They're scrambled. This one, textonk and nargilan. All brains are not equal because an ability influence nargilan. Let's see. Okay, Anahalas. Yeah, you got the first one. What's the last one? Nargilan. Okay, Timothy, thank you. Yes, learning, wonderful. So all brains are not equal because context and ability influence learning, okay? Yes, so again, what does that tell us, right? It's not really about the raw material, but it's about what happens and how we, how we grow up in a certain environment, and the kind of stimuli that we have and the connections that we make. And also ability, it's about genetics. So it's the dichotomy that we always talk about, you know, nurture versus nature. So this is really relevant when we're talking about learning. And then we have the third one, the brain is chegend by experience. So this word, the brain is, let's see if you got it right. Changed, exactly, Martina, thank you very much. So that means, and this is probably one of the most important principles, that we can change our intelligence, right? So we have IQ tests, Alfred Binet, Theodore Simon, remember the IQ testing that took the world almost a century ago. And the thing is, we have other things that are as important as your intelligence quotient. You have to have social emotional skills, and you also have to have emotional intelligence in order to learn. And Carol Dweck talks about the growth mindset concept that is also very important. Bandura talks about self-efficacy. So we can change how intelligent we are if we change our attitudes, our behaviors, if we change our mindsets, right? And then we also have 4, the brain is highly plapisk. That's easy, right? The brain is highly, somebody answered, plastic, well done. You are wonderful students. So the brain is highly plastic, and every time I say that, I think people get very confused. What does it mean to be plastic? It's not the material plastic, right? Because plastic is really hard, actually, unless you melt it and then you make something else out of it, right? But that means that the brain is flexible, and the brain is always rewiring itself. And then we can always learn, you know, for the rest of our lives, we can learn. And even when we have neurodegenerative diseases, we can still learn. Of course, you know, the capacity, the learning ability that we have declines with age and other things, but we can always learn, right? And then finally, actually we have 2 more, sorry. So the brain then-coxed new information to old. So then-coxed, I have no idea how I came up with those. You know, I just tried to find a very weird word that would probably make it difficult for you to guess the right one, but I think you're doing a pretty good job. Connects, yes, Mike, thank you very much. That's the one. Connects new information to old. Perfect. Again, she's reinforcing a lot of the things that we already know. I mean, if you've studied pedagogy and psychology, you've heard of Piaget's work, right? Jean Piaget. And he talks about the schema or prior knowledge and how there is a certain, let's say, a path of cognitive development. So you have different stages and they're incremental and stuff like that. So we know that. But so she kind of condensed a lot of what psychology and neuroscience tell us into very easy to apply, very easy to understand principles, I think. And that's why MBE is so important, because we're dealing with teachers who probably don't have any background in psychology or neuroscience, and we need to have a science that will make them understand things in a much easier way. And finally, we have this one. Learning requires attention and RIMEMO. Somebody was, okay. So Veronique, is that you? Yeah. I just want to ask you something, everyone, because you're answering really fast. Did you by any chance watch my video on my website? Because I do talk about the same thing, so that's good. I'm just checking to know if you had prior knowledge, because you're doing a fine job. You're actually A students. Well done. Very good. So RIMEMO, that's memory. Learning requires attention and memory. This is the only one that was actually not proposed by Tracy Tokuhama Espinosa. This is something that was produced in the works of Eric Kandel, Nobel Prize winner, I think in 2000, physiology, medicine, right? He studied the memory system of a sea slug, so, because they have a very limited number of neurons, like a couple of thousands only. We have 86 billion neurons, so much more complex to study, right? Now, the thing is, active retrieval. I don't want you to use the chat box now, so let me look you in the eye. Don't use the chat box now, because I want to give you 1 minute. I'll give you 1 minute to try to remember the principles, okay? But if you write them in the chat box, then you're gonna actually mess with other people's thinking, okay? So I don't want you to do that. I hope you didn't take notes. If you did take notes, don't look at your notes now. Just try to remember the 6 principles, okay? So I'm gonna give you 1 minute starting now. And then when I say, okay, then you can use the chat box. Okay. Okay, so now you can share. Just tell us, was it hard to remember? Will we get a star for the activity? Yeah, a golden star on the wall. That's good. So first share, was it hard to remember? How many were you able to remember? Yeah, it's 8 p.m. on a Friday. That's a good point, right? A little bit. Good. Let's see who else. Okay. 3.5, 4, 3.5. Wonderful. Yes, difficult, just remembered jumbled words, okay? And then again, I just gave you 6 principles, right? That's just to show you that your memory sucks, like everyone's memory sucks, actually. But I did something on purpose. I stopped and gave you a lot of additional information, right, when I was going through the slides to so I was trying to create a sensation of cognitive overload on purpose to make sure that you wouldn't remember all of them. So, and again, there were only 6 principles. And when we're teaching a class face-to-face online, think about the amount of information you deliver and you expect your students to remember, right? But why are we doing something called active retrieval? There are many, many studies that show that the effort to consciously recover the information that you've been exposed to, you've just been exposed to, recently exposed to, is actually beneficial because you're strengthening the neuronal networks, and that's good for memory consolidation, right? So a tip for you right now, allow your students after a couple of minutes to actually stop, just tell them to stop and just try to remember everything we've been discussing. And don't let them look at their notes, okay? Otherwise, it's not active retrieval, it's passive retrieval because they have cues to help them remember. Anyway, I was going to do a brain break with you, but this is actually a very cute cat and I use it everywhere. Dancing to Ed Sheeran's Shape of You, right? And I'm not going to do this because you are adults and you might be offended or something. No, I'm just kidding. But I just want to tell you that a very interesting way for you to connect active retrieving, in the class with something that you actually have to do that will facilitate learning as well, that we call brain breaks, is doing something like that, like showing a video or stopping for a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, up to 5 minutes, just to relax a little and stop thinking about what we were paying attention to, right? But let's go back here, and I talk about this on my blog, so you can go to my blog. You can actually use the QR code if you want, can take a picture. I have the presentation there as well, and you can read about that. But then I have a very important question before we do go back. What about the colors? Did the colors help you remember or not? And if it did, tell me tell me one color that you could match with a principle. Like, okay, this principle was red, this principle was whatever. Orange, yeah. Yellow one, okay, somebody remembered yellow one. Some people said I didn't notice them at all, really. 2 items with pink, yellow, and unique. Okay, you see, this is a perfect illustration of how our memory works, right? So different people will have different experiences, and you're basically receiving pretty much the same stimuli from me, right? Voice and the screen and everything, but you will pay attention to different things, and there's too much information. So what I want to tell you is there is no recipe for learning, because we know some principles. We know that, for example, associating something with the information that I want to be taught in the classroom might actually cause cognitive overload because there's too much irrelevant information. But some other studies will show that if you associate colors with whatever you need to remember, it will actually help with retrieval. And again, so green and plastic, flexible plants, I could tell the colors but not pair them with each principle, gray, pink, and orange. Yeah. So I just want you to, I don't want you to come here and watch me and then go back saying, oh, you know what, there is a recipe for teaching, because there isn't. And I think this makes it very clear that some principles are just very general principles, but we have some very important particularities, some very important specificities that we have to take into account. Like some people, for some reason, they could match yellow and one, and then they remembered, and maybe the color actually helped them remember one. Somebody somehow associated green and plastic, flexible plans. So that helped you remember. Some people didn't even notice the colors. And I did ask you to look at the colors. There was something written there, right? So let's go back. I'm going to go back and we're going to see basically from the first one till the sixth. I'm just going to read them. You don't have to copy them. If you do want to copy to write down, that's actually good for your brain, helps you remember. So the first one is human brains are as unique as faces, right? The second one, all brains are not equal because context and ability influence learning. Third one, the brain is changed by experience. Fourth, the brain is highly plastic. Fifth, the brain connects new information to old. And finally, learning requires attention and memory. And Paul, anatomy coloring book, that's great. Yes, wonderful. So if I ask you now, do you think you can remember? Probably not. I just went through very quickly, again, too much information, just to prove a point, right? So what can MBE tell us about learning then? If there isn't a secret magic formula or recipe for us, if all the brains, every brain is unique. And so they kind of work in different ways, if you think about it, right? Even though we have some underlying principles because they are based on biology, physiology, everyone is going to learn in a slightly different way, or they're going to pay attention to something slightly different. And that means that the outcome will be different, right? Well, I can tell you this, there are things we know that don't work very well. And that's what Tracy says. So I'll give you 10 seconds to read that. And you can tell me if you agree or disagree using the chat box again. Yeah. David Contreras, yeah. Carolyn, Judy, Alessandra, okay. Mariana, absolutely agree. Yes, but things are changing. Good, Nina, agree. Yes, but define neuromyth. That's good, Paul. That's a great question. Okay, so a neuromyth is basically an assumption or a claim, a false claim of how we should be teaching or doing certain things related to learning. And why is it false? Because we don't really have any evidence to support it, or we don't have a lot of conclusive evidence to support it. As a matter of fact, we have evidence to the contrary. We have evidence showing that it doesn't work very well. So that's why it's called a neuromyth. So it's basically a false claim or assumption about how the brain works, and that has implications, right, on how we should be teaching our students. And Martina says something, can't really say because when I did my studies, we didn't talk much about neuroscience and learning exactly. And I think we should change that, don't you think, Martina? Hopefully we will. So I wrote this blog post for ELT, Innovate ELT, Barcelona last year. I was one of the speakers. It was a wonderful event. So if you're in Europe now, I think they've actually moved the event to September. If you can go, it depends on the outcome of the coronavirus crisis, right? But if it's there and you can go, you should definitely go. It's a very nice event. And I wrote this for their blog, and the title is pretty straightforward, right? No, we don't use only 10% of our brains. And then I remember that the second or third paragraph, I describe a movie with Morgan Freeman and Scarlett Johansson. Remember the movie called Lucy? Anybody watch that movie? Lucy, Scarlett Johansson, she unlocked all the potential of her brain. And remember that? Yeah, David, yes. So, and then Morgan Freeman is this university professor. And there's a lecture at the beginning of the movie, and he's talking about how the things we could do if we could use more than 10% of our brain power, right? That's actually a neuromyth, we don't just use 10% of our brain. And it's really hard to tell how much we use, like even when we're sleeping, we're using a lot of our brain. And, if you touch something, like, I'm holding my cell phone, a lot of areas in my brain are activating right now. So I have the somatosensory cortex in my parietal lobe, for example, because of the pressure of my fingertips against the cell phone and the temperature of the cell phone. And I'm talking about the cell phone. So you probably see a lot of activation in my left temporal lobe. I'm looking at the cell phone. So you have activation in my occipital lobe here. And, so you're using your whole brain, right? Not just one hemisphere or the other, both together. So I'm going to talk about some neuromyths. I'm actually going to quiz you on neuromyths. And don't feel bad if you didn't know they were a neuromyth or a neurofact. So are you ready for the quiz? Use your chat box and let me know. So you just have to say myth or fact. That's what you have to write. Myth or fact, okay? Learners benefit when taught according to their learning styles. Myth or fact? Myth, myth, fact, myth, myth, myth. Okay. Yes, this is a myth. And I wrote a couple of articles about that. So I can give you a very, very, very simplistic explanation. But basically what the research shows is that if I'm an auditory learner, according to the tests you have, they are available everywhere on websites and everything. If I'm an auditory learner and I'm taught according to this learning style, meaning my teachers, professors, they only use audio and phonological auditory information, I'm not going to learn more or better. I'm actually going to learn more or better if there's visual information as well, because we don't have a specific style. We have a preference, but a learning preference doesn't mean that we learn best in that way. There's something called dual coding, right? And it's important to receive information or to absorb stimuli, information from the environment, both phonologically and visually. The works of Alan Badley and the working memory. So, I can send you the link. You can read more about that. But anyway, that's a myth. What about this one? Kids are better language learners than adults. Fact or myth? Fact or myth? Fact or myth? Myth, 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 myth. Okay, wow. Okay. Are you just assuming that everything is going to be a myth? Or, okay, depends on the stage. All right, great, wonderful. Yeah, it is a myth. I mean, and that requires further explanation, but kids are better acquirers maybe than adults, and learning is a more conscious process. So there's a difference between language acquisition and language learning. Exactly. And so if you think about learning, like actually consciously, the process of consciously attending to information, consolidating memory, using strategies and techniques, and adults can do that much better. So if you got, and depending on how old the kid is, a 6-year-old kid and a 35-year-old adult, and if you put them together, like a race, and then they're real beginners, never heard a word of English in their lives, who would get to a more advanced stage faster? Naturally, the adult would, because of cognitive processes that the kid doesn't even have. They're still developing some cognitive stages, right? So it's very hard to say that kids in general, they learn better than adults. They acquire better than adults mostly, but not necessarily because of biological processes. There are also social phenomena involved, right? Adults have a comparative model to rely on. Yeah, so adults, they have much more prior knowledge. So there are different studies showing that adults can learn vocabulary, for example. That has to do with declarative memory much faster than kids, because they have a huge repertoire that they can draw from, right? And whereas kids, they're still learning their first language, consolidating L1. So anyway, I think we should stop saying things like kids are better language learners. I think it's definitely better for kids to start learning at a very young age, because then they just get that out of their ways, right? Because when they become adults, they have to work. They never prioritize language learning. So it's better to do it when you're a kid than when you are an adult, right? Exactly. Gabriela said it. Kids have more focus and time, not like adults with families and jobs. That's it, So is it about maturational processes or more social phenomena? Like, after a certain age, you don't really care so much about learning languages because you have other things to worry about, right? You can read, I actually have hopefully a very well written and researched blog post on the critical period hypothesis. So you can also check my website. Just go to EDC Rocks, use the search tool and critical, and then you'll find it, okay? What about this one? Learning is more effective when we space out our studies instead of blocked learning. Somebody asked me, how did you define language? Okay, Paul, if you don't mind, I'll ask you to read the blog post so we can move on, okay? All right? And then fact, learning is more effective when we space out our studies. Yeah, this is a fact. It's been known for over a century. It started with this physician called Hermann Ebbinghaus, and then he published, what was the name of his book? It was a pretty famous book. I think it was Über das Gedächtnis or something like that, on memory. It was published in German. So spaced repetition, definitely, because we have to sleep to consolidate memory. And then there's the forgetting curve or the learning curve, right? And then, so if we increase the space between the review session of something that we started learning and the next session, and we keep doing that, apparently we learn much faster than if we just studied everything on the same day or like everything in a week. So if we do the same amount of repetitions, but we spread out over time, it's much more effective, okay? The brain records our reality objectively. Myth or fact? Yeah. So the question is, yeah, myth. Can we rely on eyewitnesses? Huh? Think about that, Yes. Can we rely on eyewitnesses? I always ask that question because we can't really. We filter a lot of what's going on in the environment, and we have biases. Exactly. That's what the word I was going to use, biases, right? So we have feelings or emotions that kind of mix in the way that we record or consolidate memory. So you can have a very negative experience of something, whereas your friend who's sitting right next to you can have a very positive experience, and the way you report that will be affected, right? So if people ask you because of your emotional state, you might actually say things that didn't happen, but you just feel like they should have happened because you wanted them to, right? And many films use this. Yeah, there's a great movie, 1950s maybe, remember? That they have the jury. That's a great movie. Please help me remember is it A Few Good Men, maybe? No, that's the one with Tom Cruise, right? See, my memory doesn't work very well. So the jury, 12 Angry Men. Yes, I knew there was something with men. Yeah, exactly. That's the one, 12 Angry Men. Thank you very much. Great movie that they keep asking questions and they change everyone's opinion, right? So I hope I didn't give you any spoiler, but it's an old movie you should have watched by now. So anyway, what about this one? Bilingualism delays neurodegenerative diseases. Myth or fact? It could. Yeah, everything here is actually, it is suggested because that's how science works. They'd never really say, this is what happened, right? But the evidence suggests that, yeah, Yeah, it's a fact. By 5 years, actually, you can get yourself an extra 5 years if you are bilingual or multilingual. And no, if you know more than 2 or 3 languages, you don't buy yourself an extra 5 years. It's not like if I know 5 languages, I get 25 years. It doesn't work like that. But because you have a lot of mental flexibility and neuroplasticity, right? That's why you can fight the disease much more effectively. The right side of the brain is in charge of creativity. Myth or fact? We're almost getting to the end of it. Myth, fact, myth. Actually, it's a myth. It's related to something called lateralization. And we know that creativity is actually a global process that requires a lot of things. Like, what is creativity? Like, for what? For writing? If you are writing something, your left hemisphere is probably as active as the right hemisphere. So it's not really responsible. So, you know, right-brained, left-brained people, we cannot really use those things. And I can prove that to you by telling you that there is a girl, I think her name is Jane or Jody, and she had to remove half of her brain, and she leads a pretty normal life, actually. Cognition and emotion are opposite sides of a coin. They're completely different. We can separate them. Myth or fact? Martina, myth. Myth. There is a great book by a neuroscientist called Antonio Damasio, and it's called, the title of the book is Descartes' Error. Descartes, René Descartes, I think therefore I am, right? And he says that we cannot really separate cognition and emotion because emotion is very important for us to make decisions. People who have something wrong with their emotional systems in the brain, they cannot make decisions. And I wrote about that as well. You can also find that. Now, should teachers know this stuff? I mean, you did well. I mean, somebody mentioned the gold star, right? So you're going to get a star. You did really well. Congratulations. You all deserve the gold star. And yay. So should teachers know this? The question is, absolutely. Sandra, Martina, Tim, yep, sure, okay. The question is now, do teachers know this? Do you think most teachers know this? I mean, you know, from my context, learners too, definitely. Gabriela is right. Some, a few, not all, no. I can tell you from my context here, my perspective in Brazil, I'd say most teachers don't know this, right? They actually, they assume all of those neuromyths that I showed you are actually real facts, you know. Now we can do a brain break. Have you ever seen Mr. Trunk? Mr. Trunk is my travel buddy who is not here, unfortunately, but he's a stuffed elephant that travels around the world, and he's been everywhere. So I want you to take a guess. Where has Mr. Trunk not been to? And I'm going to show you a picture of him. Don't worry. Just take a guess. Iceland, Greece. Anybody else? Iceland. Okay. Turkey. Yes, Turkey is the correct answer. Well done, Mike. This is Mr. Trunk. You can follow him on social media. Mr. Trunk Travels is his hashtag. The whole thing started as a project with my students, and then they take him all over the world. And so the first picture is in Madrid, Spain. The second one is in Argentina. So there was somebody from Argentina here, Buenos Aires. The third one was in Tequila, the city of Tequila in Mexico. And the last one, even though it doesn't really look like Iceland, is actually in Iceland. Unfortunately, my student didn't take a lot of great pictures of him in Iceland. Anyway, this is my professor. His name is Paul Howard Jones. I'm going to share the link of this talk. It's very short, very quick, actually, a couple of minutes. And I think 2 minutes. And he talks about the importance of knowing neuroscience and psychology and pedagogy so that we can make well-informed decisions in the classroom when it comes to teaching practices and learning outcomes, okay? And as learners, like Gabriella mentioned, if we are students as well, we need to know that stuff so that we can learn better. We can follow certain strategies that are going to work more effectively. But again, we have to test a lot of things because every brain is unique, right? And this is me, a huge fan of Paul Howard-Jones. He's the professor of cognitive neuroscience and brain, mind, and education at the University of Bristol in the UK. And he's a very great guy. And I actually love that he's always wearing one of those Hawaiian shirts, you know, like the flowered shirts. Yeah. And I'm also a huge fan of wine, just to let you know something about me. And anyway, and we're coming to the end. I'll give you a minute to read this. And again, just tell me if you agree or not. And I'm pretty sure you know who this guy is, right? You've heard of Howard Gardner, haven't you? Yeah. Yeah, Mike, Alessandra, Martina, David. Yep. Yes, I think we should know a little bit more of, you know, how biology works in the brain, and, you know, because we do know a lot of stuff. And but it's never a magic formula and it works every time, because there's so many variables that we have to take into account. It could be a genetic disorder. It could be that maybe we did everything right, but the kid was not paying attention for some reason. And it's really hard to assess what's going on in the brain. But we have a lot of stuff, a lot of theories, a lot of experiments that give us a path to follow, right? And then what does the research show then? What is effective? What really makes learning visible and makes learning happen in the classroom or anywhere else, to be fair? So the Education Endowment Foundation released this very interesting study a couple of years ago. And apparently it's feedback to pupils, right? To students in metacognitive strategies, knowing how to study and knowing what to do and the strategies that you can use, right? Peer tutoring, collaborative group learning. And as you can see, all of those things, they don't cost too much, right? And I think we're kind of doing the wrong things in education. We're just, you know, has there been a similar study for adult learners? Yes. Yeah, I mean, this is overall, yeah. Feedback, you know, giving you guidance, using metacognitive strategies. Yeah, definitely. Okay, what next? So this is my take, or my takeaway for you based on everything we've discussed. This is what I call Education 4.0. A lot of people are using this term. So this is my version of Education 4.0, like this new industrial revolution, the technological revolution. I think that we should look at a pyramid. We should have this image. At the base of the pyramid, we should definitely work with, you know, everybody's been talking about 21st century skills. I don't think they are actually 21st century skills. We've always had them, but we just like to call them the 4 C's of 21st century skills, like communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Yes, this should be part of the educational system. I think we also have to include or integrate technology in projects in the classroom or learning, because that's part of our reality now as global citizens, you know. Of course, there are people, a lot of people living in poverty, but when we talk about our educational reality, we have to try to integrate technology. And I think we have to work with project-based learning, because that gives students a sense of achievement and that they are actually working for something that is relevant and something that is applicable and something that might be actually solving a problem they have in their own community, right? So we can use the students to create solutions for things, for problems that we have. But the tip of the pyramid, and that's what we've been discussing, brain-friendly practices. We need to know strategies based on hard evidence, studies, on the mind and brain and education science. Because if we don't, that's one of the top two things, right? If we don't, we're actually spending a lot of money on things that don't work as effectively. So we need to start including brain-friendly practices. And how do we do that? Well, you get yourself this book, Making Classroom Betters, 50 Applications of Mind-Brain Education Science. You watch webinars like this one, follow my blog, follow other people's blogs. You watch webinars that are provided, that are offered by ILCA, for example. Check the website. Just learn as much as you can about the science of learning, mind-brain education science, neuroeducation. There are many names, right? Educational neuroscience, psychology of education. Anyway, just get to know more about those areas and start applying. And then to wrap up, I'll give you this quote, and I want you to let me know if you agree or disagree. I mean, you agree or disagree that we could transform education, right? If we focused on teaching kids how to study better, teaching teachers how to teach better, right? And you know who said that? Huh? Any idea who said that? Yeah? Okay, how did you know that? Okay. Yes, I think I'm taking credit, yes, for this one. I think that was me, definitely, or something. You're star students, okay. I'm getting the feeling you watched my webinars somewhere before. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, just send me, you have all my information. You can follow me on Instagram, send me an email, check my website. And now I think we can have a Q&A session. I hope we still have like a couple of minutes, right, Gabriela? Yes. Thank you for being here. I hope it was useful.
Yes, we have a few minutes, and then I'll say a few more things also. But if there are any questions, then we're really looking forward to hearing those, or any other myths that you've heard or facts,
Yep.
and you'd like to get them, approved or disapproved by Andre. Then we'd love to hear that. Anything that you've heard lately.
Yes. I mean, are you asking me? No.
No, I'm asking everyone actually. So if there's anything going on in your mind now, like, oh, I've heard this and that, and it's still in your mind now, then now's the time, now's the person you can ask.
Please, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, okay. And there's the information about Andre.
I think I have another slide. So yeah, just take a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, of course, probably there are not too many questions now because it's been very compact. There's so much. Yeah. And I think that was the point. Yeah. There's a question.
Oh, okay. That's a great question, Analia, right? Analia, I think. Not sure how to pronounce your name, but yeah. I have a blog post for a company here in Brazil called Troika, and I focus on 5 cognitive metacognitive strategies. And I mentioned a couple here, like spaced repetition is one. That's really good, that we should be using more. Retrieval practice, like we did, stop, try to recover, or to consciously attend to recently exposed information so that you can bring that back to your working memory. And this effort is actually good for strengthening your neuronal networks. We also have strategies that relate to attitudes and behaviors and beliefs about learning, like self-efficacy. Albert Bandura, how to become more self-efficacious. We can do that. We can also change our mindsets. Carol Dweck has a lot of research on the growth mindset. What else? We can also, I think, what else can I tell? I think the brain breaks, like stopping and kind of, interleaving. That's a good one. Robert Bjork talks about interleaving. So instead of blocking or studying something, the same subject or topic or doing the same task for a very long time, it's actually better if you do something for a couple of minutes and then you do something else and then you go back to the first thing you were doing, because the effort to retrieve that will strengthen your neuronal networks. And there's a very practical example, like practicing tennis, for example, learning tennis, and then forehand and backhand. Is it better to just do a couple of forehand shots and then go to the backhand? Actually, if you interleave those, you have much better results. There was a study at Stanford, I think. Okay, yeah, David wants to ask, and here you can find more about the courses, name of the company. Just check EDC Rocks. Anything else? Oh yeah, David asks about language, right? Cannot and should not be taught like math, biology, physics, because those are exact science. Languages are abstract. Therefore, yeah, I think languages, they are not just content like most of what we learn in Brazil, for example. Like history is just a bunch of things like content based. Language is also a skill, right? It's also mechanical.
It's communication.
It's communication, right? And it's the most amazing human faculty, if you think about it. That's why we are here, because at some point 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens started, making sounds, and then suddenly it evolved and it became language, and then we're able to collectively construct knowledge and record that so future generations can use that. So language is much more than history. Everything, actually language is the umbrella term for everything else that comes beneath language, right? So yeah, the language is much more complicated than content, I think. Just content, yeah.
Yeah. Can I have a question, Andre? Can you
Please,
go back to the one after Gardner?
Yes, I'm going right now. This is the one. Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. I remember when you sent over the slides, so I had a sneak peek of this whole thing, and this was like, I was so astounded. This is why we're doing ILCA, actually. This is why we're doing all the stuff related to language coaching, because I was just looking at the top four, and that is exactly what coaching can do in any educational setting. I mean, you're looking at how you give feedback. You're going to be giving feedback in a different way to your learners.
Exactly.
You're going to be increasing their awareness of their strategies. So you've got the metacognition there. It's also important that I think two things that I've been thinking about lately. One thing is increasing their awareness and their self-reflection, and also deepening their understanding of learning. It's about control. And I think now in these weeks, every teacher is getting to understand how different it is now.
Definitely, yeah.
To let go of that control, because you're not in a classroom anymore. Yes. It's about this space between you and as a teacher, how you handle that. And I think coaching can do a lot there. And it's also about independence, which all these topics.
Autonomy.
It's autonomy, learner autonomy. So that was something that was it was just so good to see the top four.
Definitely.
So I mean, if anyone wants to learn more about language coaching, we've got our courses. We've got a free webinar about language coaching on the 30th of March, which we're going to be talking about language coaching specifically with Carrie. So there are lots of things to join. And I just wanted to say this, and we're really grateful that you came and gave us this talk. Andre, I think all the language professionals here are really happy to have. I mean, if you could just write something in the chat box, like, I mean, did you enjoy any kind of feedback? Okay, we learn
that
from
would be great. Yeah, we learn from feedback. And I just wanted to add to what Gabriela said now. There are two authors, actually a duo, a pair of authors, and another one, Daniel Pink. I think everybody has heard of Dan Pink, and he talks about drive and motivation, and he says there are three elements: autonomy, mastery, and purpose, right? And so everywhere, all the authors you look at and what they have produced, they will somehow include autonomy. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we've been replicating
Absolutely.
for over a century. We're not giving our students autonomy, and when they have autonomy, they have nowhere to go, like what to do. They have no idea what to do, because we need to give them feedback and guidance, right? And there's Deci and Ryan, they talk about self-determination theory, and they say that students, they need to have autonomy, again, relatedness, and competence, right? And they're basically the same thing, you know, if you think about competence is about mastery, and relatedness is about having or wanting, wishing to make a contribution. So it's about purpose as well. And I think we have to teach our students how to become autonomous learners, and then we have to give them voice and choice, and they have to know how to do it. So that's why coaching can be very, very useful for that, right?
Yeah, I think that the time has come for coaching to kind of support the learning process, for teachers to embrace a kind of different approach to what they are actually doing to their own roles.
Yes.
I think it's a very nice complementary, you know, just applying coaching in the classroom will just help
Definitely.
them. It's a new reality now. We're not going back to what was before, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, in September or whenever we're starting our, you know, classes,
Yeah.
it's going to be a change thing. So, yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so let me take a look at great time. Thank you.
Lots of things.
Oh, yeah, I got a golden star. Thank you, Analia. That's great.
Wow. Okay.
I think you all deserve a golden star. Very happy, great time, very worthwhile.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Good food for thought.
We hope
That's
to
wonderful.
see you in following webinars, in courses. Yeah, just have a look at our website and Andre's website. So you've got a lot of food for thought, a lot of things to ramble on and then start digesting. And hopefully we're moving out from worm mode into more of how the brain works. So definitely.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
The bad news for everyone before we wrap up, you will definitely forget everything I told you in about 10 minutes. Well, at least 20% or 50%, you know, but then you have to retrieve and go back and revise, and then you'll learn. Yeah.
I didn't remember it.
Oh, muito obrigado. Somebody just wrote a message in Portuguese. Thank you. De nada, thank you.
Yeah, Carrie. Yeah, Carrie's here. Yeah, saying hello here at the end. Yeah, okay. So we'll be closing this. If there's anything else you want to message or ask us, now's the really final minute, because we don't want to take, you know, any more of your time. But I think it was very enjoyable, very lots of knowledge, lots of new information that we got. And thank you everyone for coming here Friday evening or Friday afternoon, who knows, for everyone. And it was really enjoyable. Carrie, you want to finish and say anything?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We had some really great participation in the chat there. Very cool.
Thank you.
And such an international crew here today. So we are so happy to have you all here. Thank you so much, Andre.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was quite a lot of fun. Yeah, and we'll have to do a screen share of something. So we'll see what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what we can do, if you want to, if we want, as a final thing, we can stop your screen share and let's all turn on our cameras and we'll do a selfie.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's great.
All right. Okay.
I love it.
Everyone, come on. Yeah. Open up.
I'll stop sharing. Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Oh,
wow,
look at that.
So
open your cameras. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take a picture.
Let's see who's there.
Okay, let's wait for everyone to.
Let's wait for everyone. Please turn on your video. Yeah. Okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, this will be so great.
I think some people are wearing their pajamas now, right? They don't want to show themselves.
Definitely. All right. This is really good. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
What about Hannah, Martina, Elizabeth? Should we take a picture?
Paul? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take it on the count of 3. Everybody kind of wave and smile at the camera.
Yeah,
okay.
2, cheese. Got it. I love this.
Wonderful.
That's really good. Okay. All right. And can we post this on social media? I mean, so the more the merrier. Okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay. Goodbye. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Stopping recording.
Have a lovely weekend.
Okay.